Okay, let's take a roll of commissioners who are present. Let's start with 4001, Commissioner Linjo.
Present.
4002, that's Chair Bowser. She is on her way. 4003, Secretary Bouquet.
Present.
4004, Secretary Commissioner Israel.
Present.
Excuse me, Treasurer. And 4005, Commissioner Smith.
Present.
And 4006, myself, Vice Chair Jonathan Noble, I'm present. Let's go ahead and start with the approval of the agenda, which I will pull up.
And I placed the link in the chat, John, Commissioner Noble, sorry.
Oh, great. Can people see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. Is there a motion to, any comments on this agenda, any modifications?
I believe I included all the modifications that we had previously discussed. So I move to approve the agenda.
And I second that.
Okay, let's take a vote. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The agenda passes. And I think we can go ahead and get started with our key speaker, Mayor Bowser, if she's present. I know she wanted to start at 6:45. If her and her team are not here yet or are not ready, we can start with some other speakers beforehand.
She'll be on shortly. Thank you guys all for having us this evening. I just want to make an announcement for the agencies who have joined us, if they can just update their names on the Zoom, just so we can know who's actually logged in. I see a lot of my names on here, and I just want to make sure that the names are up to date. And I do see the mayor on, so thank you guys.
Great, welcome, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, wonderful to have you. So I think we can go in whatever format.
Where are you? Are you in Hawaii or where are you?
It doesn't feel like it in the basement.
Oh, okay.
I'm mentally in Hawaii.
Wishful thinking, I guess.
Yeah, right. So we can go with whatever format you'd prefer. You know, we had started off thinking that each commissioner would ask a question. We could go through panel that way and then open it up to, other public questions, or if you had some comments you wanted to say.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you. First of all, I think we got I'll be very brief in my comments to leave time for questions. I think we got a call early in the year from Commissioner Bowser to have me come for the start of the fiscal year, which we started on October 1st. I think most people know that's the district's timetable. And she requested then that we spend some time talking about workforce specific investments that this budget will cover. So let me just high level let you know that we have about an $18 billion budget, which is the largest budget in the history of the District of Columbia, and largely due to an infusion of federal dollars that came to the district as a result of the American Rescue Plan. So we had a pretty significant swing as a result in our fortunes from the last budget, and that we had to do two in 2020 to this one that we completed in 2021 that represents our 22 expenditures. So we approached the budget season, obviously with kind of three phases in mind: recovery from the pandemic, providing relief to district citizens and businesses, during the pandemic and focusing on our comeback. How are we going to get back to where we were and grow? And so those phases represent how we made budget decisions, providing relief, recovering, which we're still in the recovery phase, in the growth phase to get us back, and to allow us to grow. We focused on key areas, and I'm going to switch to talking a little bit more specifically about Ward 4, but a big portion of our investments have to do with accelerating learning, or some people say combating learning loss. We talk about accelerating learning. And in Ward 4, we were able to deliver on some pretty big commitments. And I had the opportunity to, for example, open the new West, soon to be John Lewis School, which we've worked on in budgeting for some years. And I was able to advance funding for the school so that it could deliver sooner as well. We've also secured funds in this budget to complete modernizations at Barnard, Whittier, and Truesdale that are an advance Whittier and Truesdale in the 6-year budget cycle. So I'm very pleased with that development. Dorothy Height Elementary has also been added to the 6-year plan, and design and add capital dollars also to LaSalle Bacchus. We've included dollars to renovate the Upshur Recreation Center and the Emory Heights Recreation Center, and to replace the Shepherd Park Library at a new location. So those are several capital investments that have been made as well. We continue to invest in our street and alley repaving projects, $14 million to complete the Metropolitan Branch Trail from Oglethorpe Street up to Piney Branch, $6.5 million to complete Aspen Street near Walter Reed, and 3.4 for the Broad Branch Road streetscape. We have significant investments as well in public safety that are specific to the ward, but also larger public safety investments that I'm happy to discuss as well. And finally, there are specific investments at Children's National at Walter Reed that's going to allow for Children's National to open primary care and the research center that we opened just a little while ago on the campus of Walter Reed. So those are some specific issues in Ward 4, and I'm sure throughout our discussion, we'll talk about more.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that.
Yep.
Go by single member district here. So Commissioner Linjo, if you want to kick it off for us, please go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Vice Chair Noble, and thank you, Mayor Bowser, for taking the time to be with us here this evening. I see that Director Loth is on the call here as well, which I'm happy. I'm going to ask a question regarding visual and traffic a little bit, especially since DDOT just policy for requesting fixes to structure. On a micro level, what I wanted to ask about this intersection of Georgia and Kennedy, but I also had a macro level question that I come. As you know, 7 months ago, Sayer Joshua was killed on Georgia and Kennedy, a 4-year-old child, and I'm disappointed to see that in my SMD we've had very few improvements since then that we've been asking for. There's only 4 tiny little signs asking drivers not to turn left or right on red, which not many people even follow. I would hope that 7 months ago, after such a tragic accident, or such a tragic crash, I should say, or killing, we would have curb cutouts, or at the very least some flexi posts, but we don't even have paint on the crosswalks. So I hope that could be addressed shortly. I heard that you did not mention phase 2 of Kennedy Street. that I thought was supposed to start this fall, according to the timetable. On a more macro level, while I really hope this particular intersection can be addressed and others around the ward and our ANC, I think we need to get away from the intersection by intersection approach. As you know, a young girl named Allison has also been killed this year, and last week, 2 more girls were hit from Virginia with $1,000 of outstanding tickets on their way to school. And just yesterday, a wheelchair user was struck as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit, and maybe Director Lott, about how you've used some systemic holistic approaches to vision theory and traffic safety. Just as an anecdote, as you know, the metro cars, all 7,000 trains were taken out of service after one derailment, yet our intersections where our children are killed are open and people speed by them, and no changes are made. So I was hoping you could talk a little bit about clarification about the reciprocity with Virginia and Maryland drivers. I believe they owe us $300 million in parking camera violations, came out today. And even I know you have a study on congestion pricing that's going to be done anytime now. If you have any thoughts on what that will say, and if you're going to support that, since that's going to take some political leadership. Again, thank you for being here, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say and what Director Lott has to say as well.
Okay, you said a lot, and I think I missed about every 10th word of what you said, unfortunately, and I didn't hear everything that had to do with the last question. But I think the gist of what you said is, what is our approach to Vision Zero? Were there some other specific questions you want to repeat?
Yeah, that's the gist of the question, but mostly, I mean, I just want to highlight the Georgia and Kennedy Street intersection where Zaire Joshua was killed 7 months ago, and there's 4 tiny signs that we got from the administration. A lot has been done was the quote that we got, and there's 4 tiny signs that have come up in 7 months.
Okay, I'll ask the director to address Georgia and Kennedy Street.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks, Commissioner, and good evening, everyone. So to specifically talk about the Kennedy Street reconstruction project, we did 7 months ago do some immediate interventions, which was essentially to eliminate the left-hand turn, because we didn't recognize that there was a conflict from individuals traveling north or southbound on Georgia, making that left turn onto Kennedy. So that was one of the things that we did in the immediate time frame to address some of those conflicts. We have a larger scale project with the Kennedy Street reconstruction project, and this is something that has been in design for some time now. We're at the 90% design. The construction is anticipated to start in the winter of 2022, which has been the plan. And so we've been working to finalize that project, and so we hope to finalize the final design of that this month or next month in November, and then we'll put that out for construction or for bid. This will include,
Everett, you're talking about the streetscape improvements.
I'm talking about the streetscape improvement, Kennedy, okay. At Georgia and Kennedy. Yes, ma'am. This will include sidewalk and curb conditions. It also allows to upgrade the ADA facilities, improve the signalization along that particular intersection, and it also includes reconfiguring some parts of that intersection. So we have some major upgrades that are planned for that whole corridor on Kennedy Street. It's phase 2. And so we've been working to try to wrap up this design work so we can go ahead and move that into the procurement and get that into construction, which again, we anticipate starting in the winter of 2022. As it pertains to just some of the other Vision Zero initiatives, and you did reference a few of the very unfortunate crashes and fatalities that have happened here of late, and you asked about more of a holistic approach. We're doing a couple of different things, and one of those is we definitely have and are doing a holistic approach in terms of looking at the Washington, D.C. as a whole, but we also know that there's immediate needs and immediate in neighborhoods right now, so we're also looking at ways to try to curb some of the reckless driving behavior, some of the speeding, and really trying to address some of those things now in the short term. So we are looking at some very short-term immediate improvements that we can make, such as the speed humps that we just talked about in the press conference last week. also instituting more stop signs. And really, this is all trying to address speeding and reckless behavior. The right turn hardening are some of the things we're also looking to do, and some of those things we actually have planned and scheduled in the ward, and as a result of the rollout that we made last week. And so you should start seeing some of those interventions. If you haven't already, you should start seeing some of those in the next several weeks as well. And Commissioner, if there's other things, it was a little difficult. So if there are other things that you did ask, if you could please repeat that, because it was a little difficult.
No, thank you. No, thank you. That's great, and it's good to hear that we're doing more than just putting up signs, because I'm not sure if the signs actually work. We actually need to design our streets to be the speed limit that we want people to drive, not just put up a hopeful sign. So that's good to hear. I appreciate that. The second part was about the reciprocity agreement with Virginia and Maryland regarding tickets.
We are, and I've stated a couple of times now, going to pursue a regional approach and use the COG process to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lindo. Let's move on here to Secretary Bouquet. Please go ahead.
Sure thing. Hi, Mayor Bowser. Thank you so much for being
Hi.
here.
My pleasure.
My question is regarding the Department of Consumer and Regulatory Affairs. It's our understanding that DCRA will begin the process of restructuring into two separate agencies. 4D has experienced some significant issues with developers and in turn with DCRA this year, including a building collapse on 9th and Kennedy, which left a worker paralyzed, and several, excuse me, residences that have been damaged by the actions of developers, despite repeated flags to DCRA. We have concerns both about the efficiency and capacity of the Illegal Inspections Division and the fidelity in which it conducts its investigations. And we also have concerns of the oversight process or lack thereof for developers. We also, and this is the last also, have only one agency representative dedicated to addressing ANC concerns for both wards 1 and 4, which isn't feasible. What types of adjustments is DCRA thinking about as it approaches the restructuring, and how can ANCs be helpful in informing the restructuring of processes?
Well, my experience with creating new agencies is, and I've had a couple of them, is it takes several years for them to develop.
Sure.
So our focus will be, and nobody here should be surprised that I'm very much opposed to splitting DCRA up. Having said that, the council wants to fund it and do it without any real promise that the things that you addressed, more inspectors, more oversight, will actually happen. And it definitely won't happen in the short run. So our focus has to be, how do we not lose any ground, and in fact add resources where we need, while this new agency kind of develops in parallel. And that will be our commitment. And frankly, my team is working on some scenarios about how to get to the second agency. They're not fully baked as yet, and we'll spend a good part of this year working on that organization. Now, the question, if your question is, and it sounds like what you care about is that we have more inspectors, not that we have 2 directors or 2 general counsels, or right. So how do we make sure that the job of the inspector is being done from kind of not, and I think that if there is a problem in inspections, it kind of starts before you get to the inspection phase. So we can't just talk about inspectors, but we're talking about the design professionals. We're talking about how projects get approved and permitted. And then by the time it gets to the inspector, they are making sure that what was permitted is actually happening. And so the whole process is what Director Chopra and the agency have been focused on, to also arm property owners with the knowledge they need to work with their design professionals and get the projects started off right. So I take it very seriously in a city where we need housing, where we're committed to investing in affordable housing, and in fact have more dollars in the pipeline than we've ever had as it relates to building and preserving that housing. It is very important that the inspection process works and that people feel confident in it. So that's our commitment to work on this kind of new scheme while at the same time not losing any ground and making sure we have the necessary resources in the permitting process and the inspection process.
As a follow-up to that, and thank you so much, our experience has been, unfortunately, that it hasn't been working until we continue to place added pressure to get additional inspections, and then property gets damaged. We have a neighbor with a porch wall completely gone, so the porch is semi-falling off. And then we have buildings that collapse. And so we're trying to get it to a point where it doesn't get to that point. So anything that we can do, I guess what I'm trying to say is, given the experience that we've had and are continuing to experience, how can we put this before you so that you understand, and I'm sure you do understand, but that you can see sort of what our district is facing that could potentially help inform processes and systems moving forward?
Let me think about an additional feedback loop that would be helpful for you and helpful for us. Let me give that some thought about how one thing that we've tried to do over the last couple of years is to elevate ANC concerns, the commission itself, so that commissioners are prioritizing issues among themselves and advancing them by way of a resolution to the government. And that's always a good organizing tool for any commission. But if we're talking about specific ways to give feedback to the agency or to inform the creation of the new agency, we don't right now have a feedback loop for that. So let me think about that.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I see that our illustrious chair has joined us. Welcome, Chair Bowser. We're going in sequence by single member districts, so it's actually your chance to propose your question.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Welcome, Mayor Bowser. Sorry for my internet problems.
No worries. Believe me, I have been there too many times.
I called my computer guy. June 10th, the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, DEMPED, began the process of turning the public property that is Old Engine Company 22 Firehouse at 5760 Georgia Avenue over to developers through surplus and disposition process. The aim of the process is to declare that there's no longer a public use for the public property and then sell it off to private interests. Will you reconsider that there are many public uses for the public property that will benefit the Kennedy Street corridor and Upper Georgia Avenue communities and cancel the surplus and disposition process? Those important public uses include a resource center and job location services, training center, and a place for the Office of Neighborhood Safety Engagement Violence Interruption Specialist to locate in the community, which they've said to us that they badly need. So would you reconsider and stop the process so that that property can remain public property? Because at the June 10th hearing, there were a lot of uses that people talked about that could serve our community.
Well, I haven't given that any thought. I can tell you our thinking on proceeding with the public disposition process. There is a lot happening on that block of Georgia Avenue that would put the entire block to put it to a higher and better use, including housing. So I would argue that our affordable housing needs that can come with the redevelopment of that block, and our property sits kind of right in the middle of the other properties. I think that a higher and better use along that entire block would would probably serve a better public purpose than having another meeting space.
Oh, I'm not talking about a meeting space. I'm talking about a community center that really serves as a resource center and job training, because in the Unified State Plan, that plan that's based on the DC Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act talked about that DC has a lot of programs, but they're not coordinated. And a lot of people don't know about them. And this could be a way to coordinate those job training and job opportunities, and also provide a space for, as I say, the violence interruption specialists.
Well, I'll certainly look at it a little bit more, Commissioner, and see. We have our contractors who certainly work on the Kennedy Street corridor that have office space, and we can also look at our additional office space along the corridor. And we have a lot of public property along the corridor, but I wouldn't want and not having reviewed that disposition in a while, I'll go back and look at it. But I do know the block well. And I do know that the discussion on Engine 22 has been, oh my gosh, it's been going on for a long time. So the redevelopment of that block from corner to corner gives us a huge opportunity to add housing units. And I think that would be the higher and better use in that particular block.
Thank you. So are we at SMB 4D03 or that?
We're on Treasurer Israel.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, first off, thank you, Mayor Bowser, for being with us this evening. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And for your whole team as well. I see that's here. So this is kind of a serious question. So the federal indictment unsealed by the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia on September 24th, stemming from the October 23rd, 2020 police vehicular pursuit of 20-year-old Karan Hilton Brown is deeply disturbing. And we're about to hit the one-year anniversary of that tragic event on Kennedy Street. For those in the public who may not be aware, MPD 4th District Officer Terrence Sutton has been charged federally with second-degree murder, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. And I guess former MPD 4th District Lieutenant Andrew Zabavsky has been charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice regarding the death of Karan. So as mayor, what reforms have you asked Chief Conti to implement in order to avoid a similar tragedy from ever happening again? And what are your biggest concerns surrounding the actions of these two members of MPD specifically? And I should also note, just an hour or two ago, news broke that the family of Mr. Hilton Brown is suing the district for $100 million over the death of Karan Hilton Brown.
What's your question?
Sorry, so the question is, as mayor, what reforms have you asked the MPD chief, Mr. Conti, to implement in order to avoid a similar tragedy from ever happening again?
Well,
and
you might just from your question and then the charges, those officers already violated MPD policy. They already did. And the issue about obstructing justice is already against the law. And I think just this week we had we highlighted a program that we called ABLE. And I think it is very pertinent to these chase scenarios. And what ABLE is it is a recognized training series that teaches officers how what their duties are, even though it's already their duty to intervene, but how to be bystander officers and interrupt activity that shouldn't happen. And so we are working that into our MPD training. All officers are required to have 30 hours of training. So every year, the chief decides what focus areas that training will be on. And so this area of bystander. Unfortunately, we already saw a very ugly incident on a Philadelphia metro train about what can happen in situations where bystanders don't know what to do or scared to act, and that police officers can also succumb to that experience of being a bystander, seeing something that they know is wrong and not intervening. So we think that can be incredibly helpful in these situations of a chase. Sometimes it's an officer that's driving that's making the decision, and there are other officers in the vehicle. So we need to arm our officers with the ability and knowledge and tools of what to do in those circumstances, and also the very serious reminder that that is their duty. They are required to intervene. So that's what I will, in response to your questions, we don't have to change our policies because our policy already prohibits a chase in the circumstances that we saw on Kennedy Street. And the obstruction issues are always opportunities to remind officers of what they're supposed to do in the process. It's a criminal process at this point. We'll address that as we go. Once the criminal process is complete, there's an administrative process, and if there's a civil lawsuit, then the city will defend itself.
No, I appreciate that. And I would just note, because I read through the indictment and some of the details of the obstruction charges are really disturbing about what actions they actually did to basically cover up what happened. And I would just note that these officers were not, brand new. I think they were on the force for 10 and 18 years respectively. So that just seems, just from reading the indictment and looking at the details, that perhaps there was patterns of behavior that led up to what happened 1 year ago. And if there's any way to weed out officers that would potentially engage in that, that would be really needed. Thank you.
When you say the specifics, are you talking about one saying that he would write the report? What are you talking about?
So, well, in the indictment, I mean, it just talks about how they basically, when they went back to MPD 4th District headquarters, they basically lied about what had happened and did things to basically, for lack of a better term, cover up what had occurred on Kennedy Street. And again, these aren't junior officers. They were on the force for 10 and 18 years.
But when you say something like, is it a pattern, what you're referring to is the actions of two officers. What I saw was we of course had the ability and the kind of investigative processes that were supposed to happen did happen. So that would suggest to me that we had at least two officers that didn't follow the policy. And when they were questioned about it, they didn't do the right thing then either, according to the charges. So that's where we are in this process, in a very serious criminal matter. And we're gonna follow the process.
Thank you.
So I think we'll move on to Commissioner Smith, 4D05.
Hello, Mayor Bowser, and as the other said, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your commitment to attending ANC meetings like this throughout the year. It means a lot to us that you care to.
It means a lot to me. I can't wait to get to them in person.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're right there with you. Just a point of clarity on the ABLE program you just spoke about. I was just reading the press release that one of your team members posted, and it seems from the press release anyway that the ABLE program specifically refers to intervention for officers with fellow officers, subordinates, or superior officers. Does that program also train on knowing when to step in and provide that enforcement function for which they're there for on the street, or is it only addressing other officers' actions? Does that question make sense?
Yes, it does make sense. And I think largely it's the aim is to address how to deal with other officers, but I dare say that the techniques and the training would support all of their interactions. But the
Sure.
goal is for officer to officer interaction.
Understood. Okay, thank you so much. My question has three parts. I'll just tell you up front and then provide context. In line with Commissioner Israel's questions, I know that the number one thing that I hear about, and very likely that you hear about as well, is issues with violence in our community and addressing street violence. And so I'd like to ask a question about what kind of economic solutions we can provide to those who would be involved in violent crime to help lift them out of poverty, which may drive this crime. I'd like to ask about funding, particularly for violence interrupters, to provide resources, again, to pull folks out of a system where they're trapped in violent crime. And then finally, I'd like to ask about your solutions for implementing further community-based policing, where folks on the street actually know the officers who are working in their area and where we can develop relationships. When it comes to economic solutions, I think it's clear that particularly in Ward 4 and in our most problematic areas for violent crime, we see folks who just have not had the same opportunities to develop stable work in a healthy way. And I'd love to hear what your perspective is on how we can get them that work. The violence interrupters, I think, are a key element of that. However, right now in ANC 4D in Ward 4, I believe, period, we only have 2 violence interrupters. And it's completely incompatible with their goal to have such a few number, since their job is to develop relationships with folks who might be wrapped up in violent crime and help pull them out of there. So I'm wondering how we can get more violence interrupters on the street and engage with them. And then finally, on that community-based policing front, I'm hearing reports from folks in my district on blocks that have particular problems with violence, where they don't really know the officers who are in their area. There may be consistently an officer in some of these problem areas, but without developing those relationships and without knowing who they are, the community isn't able to really fully engage. And I think that we limit ourselves on our enforcement options. So I'd love to hear what you think about those issues.
Sure. So we have, and I think that there are some of my public safety officials are on board as well. So I'll turn to them for some specific numbers in Ward 4. But we have a huge investment in alternatives to policing that are going to go across the city, but especially are going to go to the places where we know we have higher experience with gun violence, and very specifically talking about gun violence. So this $58 million will cover more violence interrupters. It will cover mental health supports. It will cover subsidized employment. It will cover more participation in our Pathways program, which is really set up for our most likely to offend or be victimized by crime, and to try to get them into employment opportunities. So we have a lot of resources coming. And Dale will be able to talk to you more specifically about how we've doubled our Office of Neighborhood Safety over the last 4 years. So the level of violence intervention resources is definitely out there. And as Deputy Mayor Geltart can talk a little bit more specifically about the contract that covers Kennedy Street, or covers your part of Ward 4. Because Kennedy Street is in 4D?
Yes.
Okay, okay.
But it's not just Kennedy Street. So I mean, I'll say this as well, and Deputy Mayor Geltart, I'm sure can speak to this more, and he has also come and spoken at our meetings before. But you know, Kennedy Street, of course, we care a lot about getting the resources out there. But there really are areas throughout 4D that need additional help. And I think that, in my opinion, one of the issues that we need to work on with regard to the building blocks program, which is so great, is that 151 blocks is a significant investment in safety. But unfortunately, there are a lot of blocks that are kind of at that precipice, where I think we need to apply resources to make sure they don't go down a path to become one of the 151, if you understand what I mean. So, I think that's something we'd love to see addressed as well, where we apply those resources very specifically, but branch out as well to serve a preventative function.
Chris, you want to talk about the violence prevention for Ward 4? Did we lose him?
He's frozen.
Oh.
Yeah, Commissioner, this is Deputy Mayor Gill. No, I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Okay, yep, I can hear you.
I'm here.
My connection?
No.
Yeah, you're kind of coming in and out, Deputy Mayor.
I think he froze a little.
Deputy Mayor, maybe turn your camera off.
Just
if
make
that
sure
works.
that y'all can hear me. Commissioner,
I think we can hear you now.
Is that better? Okay. I had to get closer to, I've got a lot of kids doing homework right now. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah. No.
We could for a second.
You're freezing.
All right, we'll come back to Chris
Yeah.
on the to get you some of the specifics about what we have. And I get the gist of your question is we want more, even in the areas that aren't the most acutely affected. And I get that. And we have been able to put violence interruption in areas where we know, for example, there's some specific neighborhood issues and likely issues that are going back and forth between groups. And this violence interruption can be very effective in that area. So that's how I would categorize our approach to the violence interruption activities in Ward 4. We're always, though, kicking the tires on that issue to make sure we have the right people, that we're hiring more. And I always like to issue this caution when I talk about violence interruption and more. How do we get more? There are people whose relationships we want to tap into that are very effective at violence interruption, but they don't grow on trees. Like, we have to find them. We have to find the right people that are both going to be effective and deal with these programs with fidelity and these relationships, because it's important work. It can be dangerous work. And we need the right people doing it so that it can be effective work. And I always, share that with my team. Like, we have all these resources to go out and hire more people. But that doesn't mean that we're going to hire anybody. So sometimes the community can be helpful in raising people up that they know have the right relationships and can be leaders. And frequently, these are people that are closer to the issues and closer to the people that are causing some real violent problems. So if there are leaders in the community that can be raised up that want to do this type of work, we are always looking to find out who they are.
Ma'am, I apologize. I had to get to a different part of my internet here because I had a lot of kids doing homework right now in the house. So my apologies. Just to hit the question straight on the violence interrupters across Ward 4, particularly 4D. We've got now 2 on Kennedy Street, 2 on Rittenhouse, 1 team lead and a case manager in the area. So we have, from the beginning, as we started to see the increase that we're having in Ward 4, we brought more resources into that area. So we made sure that we increased what we needed to do on the violence interrupter side, as well as bringing more case management into the area to work with the particular folks that we know are both on Kennedy and Rittenhouse and the different neighborhoods that we know. And there's about 4 of them in Ward 4 that we know of that are in a bit of a conflict right now. So to that end, we've also, we're able to use some of the building blocks money that we have allocated towards doing mediations to bring a mediation, which we're in the process of contracting with CSC with right now, which is your provider for violence interrupters in Ward 4, to do a mediation in Ward 4 with Kennedy Street folks and the others that they're in conflict with now. So there are many resources that we brought into that area, and as we know, we've got a fall crime initiative that's going on up in the area as well, and the additional resources that 4D has brought into the area, particularly those officers walking the beat or riding the mountain bikes on their community patrol. So talking to the businesses, talking to the folks in the street. So we've increased a lot of different resources and in different ways up in the area. Now our team lead and our case manager that we brought up into the area, their job up there as the VIs are working with the folks, both Kennedy Street, Rittenhouse, and a couple of the other neighborhoods that are up there, is to see what can we do and how can we connect some of those folks with the other resources that we brought to bear within our building blocks EOC, within the gun violence prevention EOC. So we're leveraging those city resources even in areas that are not necessarily building blocks when we know that we need to add additional resources. So we're actually leveraging the gun violence prevention EOC for some additional resources for Kennedy Street as well.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Noble, our vice chair, do you have your question?
Yeah, I'll round it out. And
Sorry, Chair Bowser, can I just say, when we were talking about that, and Mayor, how much we appreciate the work that Jasmine Benab is doing in the area. It seems like she is, everything good that happens seems to have her fingerprints over it. And I know I've said this before when I met both of you that we need to clone her, but I don't think the community knows just how much work she is doing here on Kennedy Street. I'm sorry, Commissioner Noble, that I interrupted you. I just want to make sure I said that, since she's one of our great public servants.
Thank you, Commissioner. She is 100% it. That's right.
Yep. No, that's great. And Mayor, thank you to you and your team again for coming here and for the time. So I'll frame it quickly, but I think I'm getting to a specific question, sticking on the topic of crime, but actually from a bit of a different angle, and having spoken to a lot of the police officers and you know, the white shirts that are here after shootings and talking to the community, and frankly, just reading the news and, you know, refer to kind of Chief Conti's discussion with the media after the events on 14th Street on, you know, in July. He was clearly frustrated after that shooting. And I think that the narrative that I'm seeing, at least from where I sit, is that there are a small number of repeat violent offenders and gun-related offenders. And I think there's a concern that the perception is that, you know, there's some element of the community that's not tough on that. There's, you know, forget lower level crime. And I think we have to attack this from both sides, and all the community policing stuff is great. But if you look at, you know, what happens when someone is arrested and the process that they go through, it seems to me that there's no one has a really good handle on how the criminal justice system handles these really difficult, really repeat gun-related offenders. A number of ANC commissioners and I were on a call with Chair Mendelson on Monday. He made the point that it was a black box to him as far as what happened once someone was arrested. You may have 100 arrests, and of those 50 are convicted, and there's no sort of real measurement system for how those outcomes you know, result, or how those outcomes come about. And I think he actually worked very close to that world, you know, in his capacity prior to council. So I think my direct question for you is, what is your stance on sentencing guidelines for felony and possession offenses? Because it's my understanding that at this point, the guideline is a year. Former Chief of Police Peter Newsham has said that should be 3 years. And then, you know, more generally, if you could talk about what we can do as a community, what you're doing. I know that, you know, your office has made some comments about sort of the superior court system and what they should be doing to speed up processing. But I'm concerned, especially when you see articles like the News 4 investigation that talks about the number of cases being handed over to federal prosecutors declining, when that was supposed to be a way to sort of get tougher on violent crime and again, gun-related crime specifically. I'd just like to hear your thoughts about, you know, number one, what your position is on sentencing guidelines, specifically the result of with respect to felony and possession, and then two, what your position is with respect to handing these cases over to federal courts that may be more capable of prosecuting them.
Well, let me start with your second question. It was my initiative with one of the former USAOs to have certain gun crimes prosecuted in the federal district court. And you asked me about sentencing, and even before we get to sentencing, we have to get to charging. And this is, and there will be a lot of back and forth about the impact of sentencing or sentences on people's willingness to commit crime. But I don't think there's any debate over having the certainty of prosecution and conviction that is a deterrent to crime. And so that is what I think that we have to focus on. So I'll step back a little bit. And I know I sound like a broken record when I do this, because frequently you'll hear me say, we've got to get open, or things have to be in person. But you might be surprised at the number, at the kind of inactivity in our courts right now. U.S. attorneys aren't fully in person. The public defenders aren't fully in person. The courts aren't fully open. So we have the supervising agencies. You don't know what I had to do to push to even get them to offer in-person services starting this summer, and the courts to get back starting September. We're all coming out of a global pandemic, and getting back to work and getting people back to work hasn't been easy for everybody. And I get that, but it does have an impact on the ecosystem that we're all in, that affect our public safety. And so in the same way that our violence interrupters and pathways have to be up and running, and people have to have access to their mental health supports to be running, and we have to be delivering our unemployment and eviction assistance. All of that is an ecosystem. But there is one part of ours that is not fully open, and that's the courts and the supervising agency. So we're very, very focused on that. Now, Chief Conti and I, and Deputy Mayor Gelthardt, and our whole team, when we talk about public safety, we talk about it from prevention to opportunity to enforcement. And we believe in all of those things. We believe that those that want to change and that want to take us up on all of the services we have, then we're going to do it. But people who are violent and are committing crimes in our community, they have to be dealt with through enforcement. And that enforcement starts with MPD, but it has to be charged and prosecuted as well. So that's where we are. And you asked me specifically about the one initiative about federal court. Theoretically, it shouldn't matter whether it's going to Superior or federal court. Right now, I think the federal courts, they've gotten more of their grand juries operating. I'm not clear. I think the pipeline of how the activity through the courts right now is uneven. So we're going to pay attention to that. All of that's to say, we've dealt with crime spikes in the city. I've dealt with crime spikes as mayor. And what we have done is we have thrown all of the resources that we have along the spectrum of activity until we get to the bottom of the people who are committing the crimes, but also flooding a lot of services and opportunity programs in the community. And so that's how it will work. The difference, I will say, and I've heard the officers talk about this too, and as a person who's grown up in the city and who's lived through real widespread violence in DC, there is a difference. And I know this, you've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again, that the number of people with guns is through the roof. And the officers have explained it to me this way. Even in the height of violence in DC, and in the DC that I grew up in the 90s, you had a group of 10 guys, all bad, rough guys, 10 rough guys. Maybe one of them or two of them had a gun. The same kind of group of rough guys now, 10 group of rough guys, 8 or 9 of them have a gun. So you can see just kind of the difference of the prevalence of guns and how ridiculous some of these gun incidents are that are about absolutely nothing, and somebody ends up dead. So dealing with these guns, getting to the guns, and making sure we're dealing with the people who have guns who are violent is our strategy across the city, but especially in areas where we have just an incredible amount of gun violence.
So are you in favor of tougher sentencing guidelines for possessing a firearm?
I'm in favor of certain sentencing guidelines. What the
But
number?
not strengthening anything that's currently in place.
Say again?
Not strengthening anything that's currently in place.
It doesn't matter about sentencing if people aren't getting charged. Do you hear? Do you follow me? You're focusing on the wrong thing. What you need to be, what we have to be focused on is the people that we arrest, that they get charged and prosecuted. And I'm telling you, that's
a
where
bigger
it's
problem then.
It is a bigger problem. That's what I'm telling you. It is a really big issue that we have to take the gun crime very seriously, and that people that have a gun that shouldn't have a gun and have used a gun are treated by the criminal justice system as they should be treated.
Okay, thank you very much, Mayor. We have about 15 more minutes, and we want to open it up now for the residents of ANC 4D to ask their questions. I see 2 raised hands. I see Reginald Black. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. And after that, I see Nikki from DC. And I will see if there are others that have raised hands. Go ahead. Go ahead with your question for the mayor.
Sorry, who are we unmuting?
Reginald Black.
Oh.
And Nikki from DC.
Hello, how you doing? Good evening, Ms. Mayor. I have a question about the CARE program for encampments. I kind of want to understand why are closures being tagged on to the end of this program? And the other piece of that is how do we know that folks are adequately getting housed in the time frames that have circled around these encampment closures? And could you enlighten us to the status of the young man that was injured 2 weeks ago in the encampment clearing of M Street?
I don't know that anybody was injured. So let me start there. Number 2, why are we shutting down the encampments? Is that your question? So I think that
I want to know why are closures being coupled with a pilot that's supposed to be for housing, but none of the information on the pilot says that the camp is being closed. So I want to know, why is this housing program being married?
Sure, I got it. It is
permanent closures of safe areas for unhoused neighbors.
Well, they're not safe areas. I'm not and encampments are not permitted in the district. So our goal is to make available to residents who are unsheltered on DC streets housing resources, and do so with a set protocol where people have ample time to avail themselves of those housing resources and ample time to move their belongings. And at that time, we have to make sure that that public property, that may be a park or sidewalk or underpass, is also made available for public access. So that's how we're proceeding.
If I may, one more question. So
sure.
In September, the Office of the Chief Financial Officer identified 17,614 vacant apartment units in the District of Columbia, in which 16.1% of those are actually Class A luxury units. So can you explain to me how can unhoused neighbors access the 1/3 of luxury units that are vacant in the city?
I could tell you how to access it in the same way that everybody else has access to it. If your question is, how do people pick the most expensive housing? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting that there's 17,000 vacant units, which would, to me, say that there's 17,000 unhoused people. So why are we allowing those units that at least a fifth of which were built with our tax dollars remain vacant? And I want to know, what kind of policies are you thinking of to make sure the products we pay for are being used?
Well, we don't have 17,000 units that the district in the district's portfolio. I got a number that we do have 1,800
There's
units.
17,000 vacant
Listen,
units in the
I'm
city.
sorry.
And wait, there's 17,000 vacant units in the city, and your own chief financial officer reported this in September. You can go to the
Okay,
website.
I don't have any, I don't doubt that we have vacant apartment units or vacant housing units that someone else owns. And we do have 1,800 that are in public housing. I actually just got a briefing from the DHCA director that they're working on a plan to get those public housing units in shape that they can be leased. And I think that is going to provide some very significant relief on our entire homeless services center. We've been very focused in the last 6 years over transforming that system, and we've had much success in the family side for women and children. Our focus very much is right now on our single adult system. I'm very proud that we're going to be able to open a transformed 801 East Men's Shelter. We're turning our attention to the New York Avenue shelter, so that when DC residents experiencing an emergency can feel very confident in the shelter space that we provide. We also are making a very significant investment this year in our voucher programs that provide permanent supportive housing. So people who don't just need housing, but also need services will be able to use those vouchers to provide housing. One of the stats I think that I saw is that like 2 out of 3 people who qualify will have a voucher with the 22 investments that are here. I think Jenny is on the line. Is that the right number, Jenny?
Yes, Mayor, that is correct.
So with these upcoming investments, we will be able to make a huge dent in eligible residents who can get not only housing, but supportive services. And that's key. Now, one thing, I asked the team to pull together all of the outreach workers, and we're gonna talk about the whole process, all of the investments that we're making and all of the housing resources that are available. And I just want to emphasize that when we're going to these encampment sites and working with people, we need people to avail themselves of the resources. We need people to say yes to having an opportunity to get on track. And one of my team also gave me a very significant fact, is that the chances of success for somebody who gets off the street and gets into stable housing, I think something like 8 out or 9 out of 10 of them will make it. Like, is that significant? So yes, we're going out to encampments. We'll be going to every part of the city to make sure that we can get people in decent housing and we can have access to public space.
Okay, thank you. The next person, the only other hand I see up is Nikki. And can you make your question brief? Because we have about 10 minutes.
My name's Nikki. I am helping to lead eviction prevention canvassing efforts with a bunch of different legal organizations and housing advocates. And I'm wondering, with State D.C. shutting down, when it's the only thing that currently protects tenants from being evicted, I worry that it's going to lead to mass evictions and the expansion of tent encampments. So my question is, are you thinking of ways to keep State D.C. open? And why aren't you using local reserves, which you've tapped for other things like DCPS? Thank you.
Well, we have a huge infusion of federal dollars that has allowed us to, and someone will remind me the exact number of people we have been able to help, but to put out $350 million. We think that we will exhaust those funds by the end of the month. I mean, there may already be a gap in the people who are in the system that haven't completed their applications. So we still may need to close a gap for people who have already applied. So the Stay DC program is, I think everybody knows, is meant to address the pandemic and people who have had losses related to the pandemic. So as we've come out of the pandemic and the emergencies have been lifted and the moratorium has expired, Stay DC and the federal dollars going away also will go away. We will, however, be looking at our own local programs, and hopefully we will be able to get additional federal funds to help us with those local programs, like the emergency rental assistance program that DHS has been funding for many years.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor, oh, I'm sorry to interrupt, Chair. I just wanted to say, I just put in the chat, we've done about 31,000, assisted about 31,000 residents. Noah from DHS gave the updated figure through State DC.
Through State DC. And Commissioner, so you know, I just completed a briefing with the team following the evictions process. The number of people who were already in eviction proceedings prior to the pandemic, what type of activity we've seen, the interaction between the Office of the Tenant Advocate and DHS, which will allow our folks at DHS to contact everybody who may be appearing on an eviction list to make sure that they have availed themselves of every program. So we're gonna keep doing that.
All right, I saw one more hand. Gosh, I don't see it right now. There was, I think the last name was King. Can you briefly ask your question? Because we wanted to ask some transportation questions.
Hi, screen is backward. I changed my mind. I want to answer the question, but thank you for sharing your time with us, Mayor. Thanks for listening to us. It's Ken Sorrent. I was trying to get it to flip the right way, but I didn't. But yeah, thank you, and I'm good. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we can read it. We can definitely read it. Support that. We have Commissioner Bouquet. Do you want to ask a question about the new rules for DDOT? And well, let me ask that. We're asking, we would like to get an explanation about what the new Vision Zero rules with regard to traffic signals and traffic calming devices, what that means. And there's an October 8th letter that was sent out by the new acting director or interim director, Mr. Everett Lott. And just we have so many issues in ANC 4D. We want some clarification on that. And you indicated that 100 sites would be addressed each year. And are the existing service requests that we've been really pushing on, are they on that list?
Thanks, Commissioner, and I'm happy to answer that question. So Yeah, we did roll out, I believe it was last week, at a press conference over in Deanwood, a new process that really is focused on some short-term interventions to really help to address some of the concerns that have been raised throughout the district. And that's involving speeding, aggressive driving, reckless driving. And so what we put out is that we're addressing immediately stop signs, speed table or speed humps, and also flexi posts for the right turn hardening. And these, as I was referencing when I was speaking a bit earlier, are some of the immediate short-term things that we can do to really address some of those types of concerns. The requests that we've received over time, those requests are in the queue, and those are the requests that we are working to use in terms of the 100 items that we're actually going through. So we've gotten those requests, we've compiled those, many of those we've actually already started completing, or that we have completed. And so we'll be kind of working through that list based on the inputs that we received from the ANCs, from residents, are things that we may have seen when we've been out in the community on site visits. As it relates to some of the changes that you're referencing, as it involves the ANCs or the ANCs, let me be very clear that we will continue to engage with the community. We will continue to engage with the ANCs. But one of the things we're really trying to do is trying to streamline some of our efforts to make sure that we're able to deliver these projects in a more timely fashion. And so what we're talking about in terms of the engagement piece is that at some point we have to cap off and end the engagement piece, because the engagement in the past has gone on and extended for such a long time that it's actually kind of changed from where we initially started to where we may have ended, because it was going on for years at a time. So all we're saying is that we're going to cap that. We still will have the engagement. We'll still be going out to community meetings and to ANCs to where we can receive engagement, receive input from the community before we actually start a project. But we're just saying at the end of the day, we have to just cap that engagement period off. And so that's kind of what that process is going to look like. As it refers to the TSIs, what we've learned over time is that some of the interventions that are being asked for by residents and by ANC commissioners alike doesn't necessarily require us to have to go through some type of full-fledged study in order to make that determination that an intervention is necessary. And so as we're trying to streamline this process, and we've actually put this information up on the dashboard on our website, so you can actually kind of see this stuff now. And this is a soft launch as of last Friday, but this goes into effect fully on November 1. But you'll start seeing that some of these things that were required to go through some type of full study, we're no longer requiring. So again, the stop sign request, where we may have a down stop sign or maybe even a new stop sign, we're not saying we're going to have to study that to the extent that it would have gone through the process in years past. We're saying we have a team of dedicated staff now of engineers and actually go and do that review a whole lot quicker and a whole lot faster to make the determination that yes, it is warranted, that we do need to put some intervention there. So we'll make that determination from internal resources, and then based on that, we'll go ahead and issue or submit a work order so we can actually get the work done.
Okay, thank you. We have time for one more question for the mayor. No takers, no commissioners.
Sorry, Chair Bass, can I just make, since I asked a very similar question before you came on too, so that Director Lott was kind enough to repeat some of the things. But the last part there, can you clarify that was November 1st that will take effect? I know ANC 5E had some confusion about that yesterday because 311 closed a lot of requests and said that ANC resolutions were needed. And so that will be the policy until November 1st, is that correct?
Yeah, we've done a soft launch now, but and we've actually started doing some of this work now. But effective November 1 is when this really goes into full effect.
Cool. Thank you for clarifying that, because I think that was the
question. Does that mean that for a busy intersection for people trying to get to North Capitol Street, and it's actually a four-way stop sign, but so few people comply with it, that I've asked for stop lights? Do you need to do a full study for that? Do you need an ANC resolution for that?
We will no longer require ANC resolutions. That would require, because that is a capital project that ultimately would be required. And so we would actually have to do an actual study for that to determine feasibility and location. I know in your specific ward right there in New Hampshire, and I believe it's Hamilton. That's an intersection that I know has been brought to my attention in the past. And that's an area right now where we have, I think it's a three-way intersection, or three-way stop sign, but that's a place that we would have to actually study to make sure that it is supported, that the infrastructure would be able to be supported if we were to go from the three-way stop signs to a signalized intersection.
And Director Lott, really quick. So I appreciate the expedited process. I think it's great. So all of the resolutions that we've passed in the past, what happens to those? Do we have to resubmit within this expedited process, or how would you like to handle that?
No, so all the resolutions that have been passed, not just from this ANC or from your SMD, but from all the ANCs throughout the district, we have those. We have a composite of all those, and so we're working through that list now. And again, many of those resolutions we've seen in the form of a request that have come actually from community members as well, so maybe some duplication, but there's no need for you all to resubmit. We're working through each of those resolutions based on what we've seen. And in some instances, we will actually implement some of the things that are in the resolution, and in some instances, we may not be able to, but we'll make sure that we respond back to each and every one of the ANCs to let you know the outcome of those resolutions based on the work that we're going to be able to do.
Yeah, and I just want to, in 2 minutes quickly, because we do have one more hand raised, and that's one of my constituents, and it's not to highlight this particular specific issue because we want to fix, but it's to highlight the process here. So we had a resident that submitted a request for an assessment on an intersection that did not have a stop sign, so they were asked to evaluate. They asked GDOT to evaluate whether a stop sign was appropriate. GDOT determined that it wasn't based on the volume of traffic, and then actually went and removed the parking spaces alongside that street. That's at 9th and Delafield, and I'll let Ms. Quinones continue with their comment. But I guess the issue is that there's no way to appeal these decisions. The parking spaces wouldn't have been removed, but for GDOT coming in and doing their TSA, their assessment, and I guess they didn't comply with something, but it just seems to make no sense to the residents that are there and didn't ask for it in the first place.
Commissioner, I believe what I'm understanding you to ask is there was a TSA was put in for one thing that was not ultimately approved, but what did happen was that some parking was removed?
Correct.
Is that? Okay.
Which was never part of the community's request, and people are frankly pretty steamed about it.
And you said, is this at 9th and Delafield?
Correct.
Right. So I know that location well, and I used to be an actual ANC in this commission, so I know that neighborhood extremely well. And one of the things that we're having to look at and consider, and this is one of the things I actually looked at the intersection of Illinois and Farragut as well, is line of sight. And what we're seeing is that in many instances at the different intersections, we have cars that even though they may be parked 15 or 25 feet, from the intersection, the line of sight based on the configuration of the intersection still presents a challenge. And so we're really trying to eliminate the line of sight issue so that it does allow for those cars that are trying to cross the intersection to be able to clearly see as they're trying to cross over. So I don't know if that's the specific instance in this particular area, but I know that's the specific situation that has occurred in most of the areas that I've seen where we've had to eliminate parking, is really just trying to improve line of sight for those cars.
Is there any sort of appeals process if the community disagrees with that?
Disagrees with the parking spaces?
Why can't we speak?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Can I speak now?
Sure.
Sorry. So what happened is in the intersection of the Delafield and 9, they took over about 12 parking spaces, and it's very limited because we live next to the commercial side, and a lot of commercial sites take up the spaces of the residents as well. So we get forced to park about 2 blocks away from our houses, and we don't have a regular jobs like 9 to 5 jobs. We also come late night. We have a firefighter on our street. We have another bus driver on our street. We own a restaurant down the street, and we come late home and we have to park very far away. And there's no residential parking available at all. I understand the need to be vigilant about the safety of the pedestrians and the crossing. So I believe it's a better solution for that is to put some ramble strips up on the side with speed bumps on the on
a stop sign
or a stop sign. It will be easier. we can reduce a little bit the feet. It's about 40 feet that you put the signs up, the no parking. And that really restrict our parking in the street very, very much.
Yeah, it's 40 feet away from the curb. I don't understand why a stop sign has, I mean, a no parking sign has to be 40 feet away from curb in all four corners of 19 Delafield.
Mr. Lott?
Ms. Quinones, again, I'd be happy to come out and take a look and see that firsthand and just look. Again, my initial response and reaction is that we do have a situation where we're really trying to create better line of sight so that pedestrians have a clear and easy way to pass to cross that intersection, but also so the vehicular traffic that's also trying to cross that intersection can clearly see, so we can prevent any type of potential collisions.
Okay, thank you so much. We really thank you, Mayor, for your time and for staying actually over. We really appreciate the extended answers and for you bringing your entire team, so a whole group of people. So we hope you can come back again shortly, because we do have a lot of continuing issues here in ANC 4D.
Well, I look forward to it, Commissioner. And I just have to note this, that we've been on the call for an hour and a half. Chancellor Farabee was here, and since there were no real questions about schools, I'm left to think that everybody is thrilled. The kids are back in school, they're learning in person, they're with their colleagues. I'm thrilled about it too. And I just want to thank my entire team for everything that they've done to keep the government up and running during this pandemic, and everything that we still have to do to get DC all the way back. So thank you, 4D.
Mayor Bowser, before you leave, we just also want to thank Yamaleth Escobar, your ward for Moker, that's been assigned to our area.
Thank you,
he's been great.
Ward for Mokers. Thank you, Ward for Mokers.
And
Thank
Anthony
you,
as
guys.
well.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, Commissioner Noble, did we get determination of quorum and approval of the agenda?
We did.
Okay, so we can move into, we did not do the city official comments, is that correct?
Correct. We just went right to the mayor.
Okay, which we needed to. So is Captain Porter here, and we could have a 5-minute presentation by him, so that, or even more, we can do it, to talk about the fall crime initiative in ANC 4D, not just ANC 4D, in our area, in the 4th district.
Yes, I am on. And, I'm gonna go real quick through the crime stats because they do look good. So it's probably not need to harp on those. We can go right into the fall crime initiative. But I am Captain Franklin Porter. I'm the Sector 1 captain, and let's talk about the stats. The stats look pretty good this last 30 days because of all the initiatives that we have put out, because after the shooting, we did have Longfellow back in September. We put out a lot of more manpower, and we got a lot of more areas covered. We went through the entire 30 days with no violent crime occurring in the ANC. So we had 0 violent crimes, no robberies, no assault with dangerous weapons, no homicides. Unfortunately, we did have some property crime issues. We did have 2 burglaries, which put us up by 2 since last year at this time in the ANC area. They happened at both occurred at the same exact location in the 5,000 block of New Hampshire Avenue Northwest. The sector captain obviously is going to take care of that, make sure that business is up on their alarm, because like I said, both burglaries happened at the same place within a month span. So we got to definitely jump on that. The theft models, we had 2 theft models, which was really good because last time we had 7, so theft models are down. We had 8 thefts, which is down from 9 last year, so that's good. One thing that's bad with the property crimes are vehicle thefts. We did have 7 stolen vehicles. They range all over the ANC. A few of them are vehicles left running unattended, so we're trying to jump on top of that, making sure we get out that awareness to make sure they lock the vehicles and turn the vehicles off when they get out. So other than that, that's the crime stats. They don't look too bad. I'm very pleased that we didn't have no violent crimes that occurred in the last 30 days. All right, let's talk about the Fall Crime Initiative. The Fall Crime Initiative started on October 1st. What the Fall Crime Initiative is the mayor and the chief decided that they picked 5 areas in the city that had some issues that they want to basically target for their crime, mostly violent crime. One of the areas in the 4th district is going to be the Kennedy Street area. The Fall Crime Initiative in the 4th district basically starts with Georgia Avenue to 3rd Street and from Madison down to Ingraham. That's the area that I'm responsible for. So each captain, there's 5 captains throughout the entire city that basically has a crime initiative area. And I have the one in the 4th district that deals with Kennedy Street. So what that does is it gives me more manpower. It gives me more resources to reach out when I need it to put in that area. I put a plan together, started October 1st. And so far, since the first 20 days that this started, I haven't had no violent crimes. I had a few property crimes, but it seemed like the plan is working. And everyone that I reach out to definitely is helps with the initiative and basically keep that area under control. Now, the Fall Crime Initiative does end on December 18th, and I know I get a lot of questions on what happens after December 18th. What happens after December 18th? We basically go back to what we was doing before. However, with a lot of the help that we've been having and a lot of other resources I've been reaching out to, it gets me to be able to know a lot of our partners and reach out to our partners. So obviously I'll keep that going throughout the after December 18th. And that's going to be it for MPD. I'm just going to leave it open for questions and then we go from there.
Captain Porter, sorry, Commissioner Lynch are here. You have your walks on Thursdays, right? Everyone invited to those?
Yes, every Thursday we're going to have a community walk. I usually reach out to all the partners, but I am opening up to a community, any community that wants to show up. But CSOSA is going to be involved in this one. They're going to pretty much try to lead it a little bit because they want to do some stops along the way. So we will be doing tomorrow, starting at Georgia and Ingraham. If anyone wants to join, it's going to be at 2:30.
Okay. Any other quick questions from the commissioners? So, and
Yes.
Yeah,
Just. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Commissioner Israel, I was just going to read the question off the chat. Just a clarifying question, Captain Porter. There's a question in the chat. What about Kennedy Street from 1st to 3rd? Or is that included in the initiative or not?
It is not. It stops at 3rd Street. It goes from 3rd to Georgia Avenue.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, Captain Porter, I had a specific question regarding a hit and run in my SMD on October 6th at the intersection of Farragut Street and Illinois Avenue. And from my understanding, the car that was responsible for it, or the people hit, ran away. It was a stolen vehicle. So I was wondering if you could provide any update on that and the status of the female driver who was hit and I believe was hospitalized. If you have any updates on that.
I do not. I wrote it down. What I'll do is I'll look it up tomorrow and I'll shoot you a direct email. I got your information.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Let me turn this. I'm gonna turn the timer off. Any questions from the for Captain Porter? We have time for 1 or 2 questions. Please unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay. Hearing none. Does any commissioner ask the final question of Captain Porter?
Just that, Captain Porter, I look forward to joining you on Thursday's walkthrough. Thanks for being here.
I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Captain Porter. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
The next, do we have Matthew Landrieu here for Councilwoman George? Give an update for the council member. Thank you.
Hey, good evening. How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good evening. My name is Matthew Landrieu. I work in constituent services for Council Member Janice Lewis George here in Ward 4. I put all my contact information in the chat, and for anybody who's joining by phone, I'll say my contact information aloud at the end of my comments. So if you want to grab a pen or a pencil while I'm talking, you can write down my information. Just 3 things from me tonight. One, as always, we hope that folks in the community will participate in legislative hearings, which has started back up as of the beginning of October after summer recess. It's a great opportunity for you to come and, one, learn and listen about how the district government is functioning and how the committees on the council are providing oversight and support for residents and navigating the district government. There's a few key hearings coming up. We know that accessibility to these hearings is often an issue that's raised, and I think the pandemic has offered access virtually, which hopefully is some level of new accessibility that folks haven't had in the past. There's different ways to participate in public hearings by writing in with your testimony and your experiences, by writing to us so that the council member can bring up some of your experiences and her testimony and her questions for agencies, or for showing up and testifying virtually by Zoom. And we hope that y'all will take advantage of as many hearings as possible. You can always go to the DC Council website and look at a calendar of all the upcoming hearings, but just some of the ones to highlight. Tomorrow, there's going to be a hearing on police accountability. There's a few pieces of legislation before council that they want to talk to the public and that they want to talk to the government agencies involved about. And so if you're interested, I'll drop a link in the chat about how you can be involved or learn about tomorrow's police accountability hearings. Next week on Tuesday, the 26th, there's going to be a hearing regarding education governance in DC. There's a few bills before the council changing the governance structure, including Councilmember Louis George's bill to make OSCE an independent agency under the State Board of Education, which would change some of their powers. So we hope you'll learn more about that and reach out to our legislative team if you have questions. We're also seeing a hearing next week regarding DPW and their treatment of abandoned vehicles on the streets. We're basically trying to make it so that it's easier to identify which vehicles are in fact abandoned and dangerous, and empowering DPW to remove them from the street more easily. Finally, there's a hearing on redistricting coming up on the 28th, which likely doesn't seem, based on some of the census data, that it will affect the ward-based boundaries of the district, but may very well impact the Advisory Neighborhood Commission boundaries. So we hope you'll participate in that process. I'll drop links to all of those in the chat, and you can follow up with me or anybody from our team afterward. The second out of 3 updates are just comments for you guys is around Stay DC. We had a brief conversation about Stay DC with the mayor and her team. The mayor announced recently that Stay DC is going to stop accepting applications on October 22nd. This is a significant issue. We're already starting to see some of the evictions and foreclosures happen that were initiated pre-pandemic. I can tell you firsthand, these are very violent and horrible processes to encounter, to witness, and I can only imagine to be part of directly. And so we want to do everything possible to make sure that folks have access to this program now to stave off that particularly crude tool being used. We also want you to help us push the mayor. She talked about hoping that federal funding will come down to increase kind of support for rental assistance, for mortgage assistance. But we think that the district has enough money to invest in that now. And so we hope you'll help us call on her to do that now and as soon as possible, because the next 7 days is not long enough to get everyone who needs help signed up for the Stay DC program or for mortgage assistance programs where folks really need the help. The last thing I'll say is that we are consistently sending out newsletters every Friday. Our comms team is doing an incredible job working with the council member to update the community on what's happening. We need more people to sign up so that everyone knows what's happening. And we need your help reaching out to the folks who don't have access to internet. So please help us get to the seniors or the people who don't have access to internet in your neighborhood so that they can learn about what's happening in our community.
Okay, thank you, Matthew. Can you say, you said you want people to help you with the monies so that people can not be evicted, even though the Stay DC funding is running out? What would the council member like us to do if we can?
That's a great question. I think if you're specifically asking about how you can help advocate to the mayor about increasing the amount of funding that the district government is putting into the Stay DC program, you can write to the mayor, to the mayor's office. You can write to us asking us to support that kind of effort. You can write to other council members. All of these things will really help push the district government to acknowledge that we're in a significant crisis and that we really need the district to put everything it's got toward protecting tenants and homeowners in the district right now.
Okay. Any other commissioners have questions for Mr. Landry?
Yes, good to see you, Matt. So my question is in regard to redistricting. My understanding is that at least for the ANC single member district redistricting process, which I think starts in December and goes through, I think, March or April of next year, at least, that each ward council member will basically appoint a task force of members to sit on that. And from what I've heard from Chairman Mendelson is that it's really up to the discretion of each individual council member to decide how that works, who sits on it. Could you fill us in on any additional details about how Councilmember Lewis George will be approaching that?
Cool. I hadn't heard about that. I'm happy to talk with the council member about it. When I go talk to her about it, are there thoughts that you have or the other commissioners have about what you hope that process will include?
That's a great question. And I've testified on this before the subcommittee on redistricting twice, but my own personal opinion, I'm not speaking on behalf of Commission 4D, but is that I don't think sitting ANC commissioners should be members of the task force that will determine the borders of their single member districts that they might be running for re-election in. I think there's something to be said about former ANC commissioners that have some expertise, possibly participating and getting recommendations from us, but I really am opposed to sitting commissioners being live. That's my own opinion.
Can I just second that from Commissioner Israel and go one step further, that we actually have a very knowledgeable former commissioner in ANC 4D that when the time comes, I would love to nominate who seems to know a lot about this and is not a commissioner anymore. So we hope the councilwoman would like our input on that, and I agree 100% with Commissioner Israel.
Okay, one
last. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you.
It doesn't, you don't need to put together a resolution or anything, but just like put together an email, a letter, a text message, let us know what you think about it. Like we're totally into hearing what y'all think about that process. Because if we have as much power as that, the council member is going to want to hear your feedback.
Okay, any other questions from the commissioners before I move very quickly? We have 2 more minutes with with Matthew.
Not a question, but just saying thank you publicly again to Matthew for joining me at a walkthrough this morning at the 400 block of Delafield, along with DC Health, DPW, and 311. You guys were great. So thanks for taking the time to do that.
All right. Do we have any questions from the attendees, the public? Please unmute yourself and ask your question. We have less than 2 minutes with Matthew. All right, thank you, Matthew, for your time. We're going to move on to try to finish the meeting. Appreciate your always coming. Thank you.
Chair Bowser, would you give me 10 seconds to read my contact info aloud to folks joining by phone?
Yes, please do, because there may be people participating by phone as well. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Matthew Landrew from the council member's office here in Ward 4. My cell is 202-286-6311. And my email address is mlandrieu@dccouncil.us. Thanks for your time, folks.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming. I want to turn it over to Yamila Escobar. She's our moker. And if you have just a couple brief remarks, 3 minutes or less.
Everyone,
thank you
for having me.
And thank you for helping coordinate getting the mayor here.
Of course. She was happy to attend. So I don't want to take up too much of your time. It's my voice. I just want to remind you guys that the booster shots are available for residents who are over 65 years of age, 18 years and older with an underlying medical condition, and also a resident of a long-term care facility, or anyone from the ages of 18 to 64 years of age with increased risk of COVID-19 exposures and transmission. They are also eligible for the booster shot. And again, By those of you who are not aware, DCPS back to school update. By November 1st, 2021, all adults who are regularly in all schools and child care center facilities in the district must be vaccinated against COVID-19. This applies to all DC public schools, DC public charter schools, private schools, and child. I don't know why my TV just decided to turn on its own. So sorry about that, but that's all I had. Just the booster vaccine. Make sure you guys, if you guys qualify for the booster, please make sure you get it. And thank you guys again for having me.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Yamlet?
Yes, Chair Bowser, I had one quick question, and Yami, I meant to ask this to Deputy Mayor Lucinda Babers at the end of the session with Mayor Bowser, but didn't have a chance. I'm going to ask you this to hopefully pass this along. Because Deputy Mayor Babers is currently the only WMATA board member from DC currently, the situation right now with Metro Rail, as you are likely very aware, is terrible. 30-40 minute delays. It's also causing massive traffic congestion on our roads during the whole day, basically. WMATA has done terrible communications on this. They have not expanded Metro bus service, which is quite frankly astonishing. They announced this on Sunday evening, it started on Monday morning. So I guess my question to pass along to the deputy mayor is, by virtue of being on the WMATA board, what is she doing to make the situation better for DC residents? Because it's really bad right now.
Got you. I will flag this for her, and then I will shoot you an email once I have a response.
Thank you.
Commissioner Israel, that was a really good reminder. If you could flag something for me as well, Yami. Our commission had sent a letter to Deputy Mayor Geldart on September 28th, asking specific questions about public safety and requesting a plan. We have not received acknowledgement of that letter. So if you wouldn't mind following up with Deputy Mayor Geldart to see if they can at least acknowledge receipt and let us know where they are in terms of providing responses to our requests. Thank you.
Okay, if you don't mind, if I was on the email, can you re-forward that to me so I make sure that I reflag for them?
Yes, we
I'll
can.
forward it to you. I'll forward it.
Thank you. Thanks, Chair Bowser.
Any questions from our public? If you have a question, we have like 2 minutes. You can unmute yourself and ask a question. Commissioner Noble, are there any people on the phone that may want to ask a question of Yamlet Escobar?
None that I can see. If you're on the phone and you'd like to ask a question, I believe you press *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you, Ms. Escobar. Thank you for helping us get the mayor here, and we'll be calling on you again, and we appreciate all your work. So, and I will forward that letter to you very shortly.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a good evening. I'll stick around.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to community comment because there's a placeholder for our Ward 4 State Board of Education representative, Frazier O'Leary, but their meetings are usually at the same time as ours. So, and he usually calls me if he's going to be here. So he's not here. So we're moving on to community comment. Do we have, the Beacon of Light representative, Ms. Molyneux, to give just a brief introduction of Emory Beacon of Light and what the organization does? Okay. I don't hear her. We will move on to Commissioner Bouquet, who has a resolution with regard to having additional resources for the violence interruption specialist. Commissioner?
Sure. And Chair Bowser, did you want to provide a few minutes just in case that there were other constituent concerns or comments that folks wanted to raise?
I did. I didn't hear any, and we asked people to unmute if they had a question by *6, and I didn't hear any.
Got it. if anyone does have a concern or thinks of anything, please put it in the chat. Happy to move forward with the resolution. Commissioner Noble, would you mind?
Okay, I'm sorry, I forgot about there are other people that have community comment. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, from Beacon of Light, as if it were a regular speaker. I think Uptown Main Street.
Yep.
Comment. Please go ahead. Gabriella?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Sorry.
Great. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Just very quickly, we have an announcement for some free and fun events for everybody on Saturday, the 30th of this month. We are joining Ancho. They're going to hold their annual Happy Trees Festival, and it will have a Halloween theme. There will be a Halloween parade for all children. There will also be a pet costume contest, treats, prizes. They will have a market, apple cider, and other things. So we want to welcome the community to come to 7th and Kennedy from about 1 p.m. to 5. And we will have other businesses on 7th and Kennedy join in with music and other treats for the neighborhood. So mark that on your calendar. Those of you in the evening who would like to go to the Graffiti Museum on 14th and Crittenden, there will be the showing of a movie that evening, and also additional art around that area for people to view. I also want to make an announcement about the community mural that we've been discussing for some time. We've had a setback because, as you will recall, the homeowner had given us permission for install a mural at 5th and Kennedy. Now, we want to let people know that they have rescinded that offer for that wall. We cannot install a mural there. And obviously it belongs to the homeowner and we respect their wishes, but we have found another location that is 14th and Georgia Avenue. And the owners of the business, which is a Lucky Corner Market, and that long wall have given their approval, and at least they have agreed to install a mural there. So we want to work with the community. We'll be talking about this on the 30th. If you want to come and chat with us about the ideas that we will have for that particular wall. And we think that hopefully we will get this now. We'll be able to get this done. Okay, any questions, please contact Uptown Main Street. I'm going to put the email and our phone in the chat. But come out on the 30th. We will be there. We could talk, and we can also enjoy the Halloween and the Happy Tree festivities. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from the community? Any issues you'd like to raise?
Chair Bowser, can I just, Gabriella, sorry, first of all, I just want to thank you for the jazz thing that you guys threw last Friday, which was fantastic at HR Records, which was really nice. And then the Lucky Corner, the Kennedy in Georgia, correct?
Correct. Can you hear me? Yes, that is Kennedy,
sorry,
Georgia. Yes.
Perfect. I wasn't sure I heard you correct, so thank you for that clarification.
Okay, let's move on. Are there any community comments from residents? Any ideas, concerns, or questions that you have for the commissioners?
Yes, I would like to thank Zach Israel for the awesome music in the park at Lorenzo Allen Park, a great event. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions, concerns? If you're on the phone, you can unmute yourself by clicking *6. Hearing none, I'm going to move to Commissioner Bouquet for the resolution on collaborative solutions.
Great, thank you, Chair Bowser. Commissioner Noble, are you able to share that? I'm happy to share my screen as well, if that helps. Awesome. I will be brief. This is an extension of the conversation we were having earlier with the mayor. Commissioner Smith kicked it off. It is in regards to expanding the resources currently available in Ward 4, as well as specifically 4D for violence interrupter services. So essentially, and I won't read the whole thing unless Chair Bowser, do we have time to briefly read the resolution?
I would read the whereas, the therefore resolved.
Sure. And just to give folks just a little bit of background, the Collaborative Solutions for Communities is a community-based organization that is currently contracted to provide violence interrupter services for Ward 4 and 4D. They are contracted or provided grant funding through the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement. Ward 4 currently has 2 dedicated violence interrupters for the entire ward, one of which is dedicated for the Kennedy Street corridor. As was explained by the mayor earlier, there has been an influx of funding, which we're very excited about, for violence prevention in the fiscal year 2022 budget. And we'd like to avail ourselves specifically for Ward 4 and 4D of those funds, given the fact that violent crimes by a gun or with a gun in our ward overall have gone up by 11 from this point last year. And out of those 11, 8 have been specifically focused or occurring here in 4D. So with that, we definitely want to assist CSC with with getting additional resources to enhance the good work that they are doing. And so I will go ahead and read that therefore be it resolved that Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4D urges the ONE's office, the Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, to provide additional funds to CSC to adequately hire for additional violence interrupter staff in Ward 4 overall to meet the increasing needs of violence prevention, including a case manager and a community outreach coordinator. We're also urging, or I propose that we also urge the ONE's office to provide additional funds to CSC to expand the violence interrupter team in 4D to 2 dedicated violence interrupters to support and improve upon the existing work within the Kennedy Street corridor. So enhancing that 1 team member to 2 team members to effectively do their job. And then finally, to urge the Department of General Services and or other partner agencies, such as the Office of Planning, to identify permanent space in 4D, out of which CSC can offer targeted and community responsive programming on a regular basis to community members most at risk of being involved in violence. So basically, one of the biggest requests that CSC has made to the commission is finding that dedicated space. At times, they're able to utilize the space out of the Emory Recreation Center, but it is not permanent. So we're in support of finding that or identifying that permanent space within our district to offer those services to those that need it. So I would like to, well, Chair, I'll turn it back to you for additional discussion.
Oh, okay. I'd like to add my name to the be it resolved to serve as representative on the matters, because I've been having conversations back and forth with the Department of General Services since March, May and June, and just had a recent conversation with Regina Payne on trying to find a place. So I would like to add myself on that. Would you accept that as a friendly amendment?
Absolutely.
Okay. So we have a motion and to support additional funds and space for violence interruption specialists, amended by adding Commissioner Bowser as one of the representatives. Do I have a second for that motion? I'll second it. So it's been moved and seconded. Motion in support of additional violence interruption resources in Ward 4 and ANC 4D. Is there any discussion of the motion by the commissioners?
I think it's great. I think it's a great resolution and a great motion.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner
Yes,
Israel.
Commissioner.
Questions or explanation needed from our attendees? Hearing none, are we ready to vote, commissioners? All in favor of the resolution by Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4D in support of additional violence interrupters resources in Ward 4 and ANC 4D as specified by Commissioner Bouquet, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it and the resolution is passed and will be submitted to the proper parties. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. Next, we're going to very quickly vote on the standing rules. The standing rules are kind of the practical rules that the commission goes by in meeting notices, handling requests to address issues in the commission, monitoring of citizens' complaints, what the law and our bylaws require for distributing notice of our public meetings so that everyone knows about it, the conduct of the meetings. They also talk about when a commissioner is addressing the public agency, if there's any confusion, that the commissioner should make it clear that that is that commissioner's position unless the commissioner, unless this is a commission position. And if we talk about certain expenditures, and also talking about vacancies. So it's really just kind of a practical outline of how we run the commission. There's also sanctions if there are violations of the bylaws and standing rules. It kind of discusses those as well. It also talks about office use and storage space. Currently, we don't have an office, we have storage space, and that the treasurer records are supposed to be there. It talks about use of the official letterhead, and that it's only for the commission use and the commission use of the logo. So it's really kind of a practical guide of everyday work that we are to do to keep our commission running, particularly when we're preparing for public meetings and we're deciding, we're doing the groundwork necessary to take a position on issues or to get speakers to speak about certain issues. And so it's about 10 pages. So, excuse me, 9 pages. And I won't go into any more detail than that, but I'll take questions if you have on what we're trying to do with the standing rules, because we passed the bylaws several months ago. And we're now passing the standing rules that somewhat repeat some of the things, but gives some specifics on how we approach the district government, how we, who is responsible for signing resolutions, all those kind of details of running the commission on a day-to-day basis. Any questions from the commissioners? Okay. This is kind of the groundwork, the grunt work of being a commissioner. Any questions from the public attendees? Okay. Hearing none, we have to pass this by majority vote, and it can be amended at any time by majority vote of the commission. As I say, and it also sometimes follows it will follow the law, because right now under the law, we have to have 2 methods of notifying people of the public meetings. And although we do actually more than that, if the law were to change, we would have to change the standing rules in order to be practically in step with the DC law. All right, I move that we pass the standing rules of Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4D.
I second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. The motion to pass the standing rules of Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4D, which is again kind of the practical rules for everyday running of our commission. Commissioners, are you ready to vote? All in favor of approving the standing rules, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it and the standing rules are passed. I'm going to turn it now over to Commissioner Israel for several important Treasury matters.
Yes, some fun Treasury items coming up. And I believe Vice Chair Noble will be sharing his screen. So the first item is the September monthly Treasurer's Report, I believe, according to the agenda. There we go. Okay. So just to recap very, very quickly, we ended the month of September 2021 with a closing balance of $23,906.27. As you can see here, all of the checks that I wrote were to Commissioner Bouquet and Commissioner Bowser, and most of these were for expenses throughout the entirety of 2021. We only got new checks sort of in the middle of the year. And so that's why they were all written on that date, September 10th. I just got them all done at once. And as you can see, they were for mainly web hosting here on Zoom, email alert fees, flyer distribution, communication related type items. The last thing I'll just briefly note is the allotment for $12,572.94. The reason that was such a large allotment at one time is because it was actually 3 quarterly allotments that they gave to us at one time. And those 3 quarters were for quarter 4 for fiscal year 2020, which ended September 30th last year. And then the first 2 quarters of FY 2021 from October 1 to December 31, 2020, January 1 to March 31, 2021. So they finally gave it to us in September. And so right now we're just, the only outstanding allotment is for Q3 FY21. So hopefully we'll get that soon. That's in process. We've submitted everything to the Office of ANCs. So I guess, do we need to approve officially the Treasurer's Report, Chair Bowser? Or?
And I think to keep everything separate, I think we should just really quickly vote on it. Do you make a motion?
Yep.
Yeah, so I'll make a motion for ANC 4D to approve the September 2021 monthly Treasurer's Report.
Okay,
Second.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Noble. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the ANC 4D monthly Treasurer's Report. I need to stop here and ask if there are any questions from the commissioners or from the public with respect to this monthly report before we vote.
No questions, but just for those that are looking at it, just clarifying, the web hosting is for our anc4d.org site, and the email alert fee is for the constant contact platform that we use to send out our reminder alerts to our listserv. So in the event that those terms weren't clear, just wanted to make sure that you knew that.
Sorry, my apologies for not clarifying that.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. I guess I should clarify because it looks like they're making me rich. Mine are for, I distribute a monthly newsletter to like 40 blocks of my ANC. And so the printing cost and the distribution cost, that's really, and I think we also probably have here the cost of our ANC signs that we have, because since we were virtual this year, we got ANC signs earlier in the year, but we just, because as the commissioner said, we just got our checks recently, we just submitted it. Okay, we will answer that question as soon as we vote on this. I see the question from the community member. We have it's been moved and seconded. Commissioners, all in favor of approving the Treasurer's Report as presented by Commissioner Israel, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, continue, Commissioner, and I'm going to look at the question from the chat. Continue.
Okay, so next up we have approval of the fiscal year 2021 fourth quarter financial report. So just for everyone's awareness, this covers July 1st through September 30th, 2021. And as you can see, I don't know if we can, yeah, there we go. Okay. We received three quarters worth of allotments in September, but in early August, we received an additional allotment that was from, I guess, the third quarter of FY 2020. So in this fourth quarter of 21, we received basically a fiscal year's worth of allotments to ANC 4D. So that's why we have over 16 grand from the DC government coming in. And the communication costs, as you just saw in the September monthly report, it was basically all of that plus similar things from earlier in the quarter in July and August. And so, yes, we need to pass this in order to get our more than $4,000 allotment for the end of FY 2021, which ended 20 days ago.
Can you make a motion?
Yeah, I make a motion that ANC 4D approves of the quarterly financial report for FY 2021 quarter 4.
Okay, we have a second. We have it's been moved and seconded that we approve the FY 21 fourth quarter report. Are there any questions from the commissioners or our attending residents? Okay, hearing none. Are we ready to vote? Commissioners, it's been moved and seconded that we approve FY 21 fourth quarter report. All commissioners in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Commissioners opposed, please let us know. And any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it and that is passed. Now to the approval of the FY 22 budget that we must do because it's a new fiscal year. Commissioner Israel?
Yes, so this is a very important vote that we'll be taking tonight for the public's awareness. This basically authorizes ANC 4D in terms of what we can spend for the remainder of FY 2022, so through September 30th of next year. And, we are required as ANC commissions to basically receive, comments from the public over the last 4 weeks about this budget. So we did mention this at our September 22nd meeting, and we posted it, the draft version of the proposed budget on our website. I will mention I did not receive any comments from the public, although we did offer that for the last month. I just wanted to mention that. And there are some changes that I made as treasurer to the budget that we have here now versus the one that I originally put together in September. And the reason why is because since the fiscal year ended on September 30th, I could actually look in totality of the whole FY 21 of how ANC 4D spent money. Where did we spend more in certain categories? Where did we spend less? And so actually, Vice Chair Noble, could you, if you have it available, could you share the FY 21 breakdown there? There we go. So you can just see in the red there that we spent way more in grants than we had originally allocated a year ago. We'd allocated 10,000, we spent 14,650. We spent a little bit more in bank charges. We spent about almost $600 more for communication than we anticipated. So there were some things that we budgeted for where we spent $0. Direct office costs, we budgeted $1,800, we spent $0. Office supplies, equipment printing, we budgeted $6,500. We spent a lot less than that. we spent only a couple $100 for the whole year. Purchase of service, $5,000 budgeted. We spent $45. So in my opinion, if we're gonna not spend money in those categories, I would rather us budget from the get-go in categories where we know we will likely be spending more money. And so if we could go back, Vice Chair Noble, to the draft FY 22 budget. So what I did was I put a lot of money towards communication. I know it seems like a lot, but I just want to clarify something. So in addition to our regular costs that Commissioner Bouquet spoke about and Commissioner and Chair Bowser spoke about, we did approve of a mailer that's going to be, it's already in the queue in the mail system for all ANC 40 residents. It's very costly. It costs over $7,000 to do that. And that expense took place, during the first quarter of FY 2022. So I incorporated that expense in this annual budget since it is taking place in this fiscal year. And I budgeted an additional $7,300, some odd there, in case we wanted as a commission to send out another mailer at some point later on in FY 2022. So that's why there's $21,200 there. We might not do that, but just to make it easier for ourselves, I increased that. Because we spent more money on grants this fiscal year, I increased the grants from 10,000 to 15,000. And then because we saved money in the other categories that we spent nothing in FY21, I plussed up the other category to $5,000. And they have some examples there in parentheses from the Office of ANCs about what that means. But my interpretation is that that's fairly broad about what other means. And so I want to give us the latitude to spend funds for, as an example, permit fees for community events that we put together, odds and ends like that, that we have the flexibility later on authorizing it today with this vote. And I should mention too, another really brief detail. So we just approved tonight the financial quarterly report for the fourth quarter of FY21. We are still waiting from the DC government for our allotment for FY21 quarter 3. So if you look in the top right corner there of the spreadsheet, of the worksheet, this budget is sort of taking into account that there's still 2 quarters worth of money from FY21 that are owed to us as a commission. So that's about $8,400. And so, we received $16,764 for all of FY 2022, plus the $8,400 and plus the additional amount we already had in our account going into FY 2022. So when you do all the math, it comes out to just over $50,000, through the end of FY 2022. So I just wanted to explain the math real quick. So under this breakdown, we'd spend just under $43,000 for FY 2022. We'd enter FY 23, with just over $7,000, but that's assuming we spend every penny of this budget, which we will not. So we should enter FY 23 with more than $7,000. So I'll just leave it there. And any questions, comments, concerns? I mean, any ANC commissioners who want to change it, now is the time. So
I would just follow up. So it looks like the final line there got cut off in the PDF. So that looks like the final ending funds are projected to be about $7,000 at the end of the fiscal year.
Yes. Yeah. So based on the math of, again, the 2 outstanding FY21 quarterly allotments that are coming into us, the 4 quarterly allotments for FY22, and the more than $23,000 we already have in our bank accounts, we'll have over $50,000 for the entirety of FY22, taking all that into account. And the budget's just under $43,000. So we have about $7,000 left over.
Commissioner, may I ask you, did we have 0 direct office costs for fiscal year 2021? Because we do have our storage space in the Colony House. And I don't know if they forgot to bill us, but we paid.
Yeah, so, in my records, the way that this is categorized with the sort of the software spreadsheet that the Office of ANC supplies to us, there was no expenses designated for that during the entirety of FY21. So from what I've seen, I mean, if there was, it would have been listed there. So yeah, I mean, according to our spreadsheet, there was $0 for that.
Right, but do we want to keep that in mind because we paid it every year over the last several years when we gave up our office because it was so expensive?
Yeah, I guess the question is, has anyone gotten an invoice from Colony House? Because I haven't seen one.
I haven't either. No, I was just raising the issue that we need to make sure we budget for it.
Yeah. I mean, again, I have not received anything from them regarding that.
Okay.
To follow up on Chair Bowser's question, Commissioner Israel, are these buckets like fungible? Like, can we move funds from one to the other should we need to in the coming year, or are they set in stone?
So my understanding is the answer is yes, but I believe, we would, as a commission at a public meeting, would have to vote to amend it in a certain way or to authorize those expenses down the line. Chair Bowser or Vice Chair Noble, if you want to correct me there, but that's my understanding.
That's exactly right. If we decided that for some reason that we didn't need the full 15,000 for grants and we needed it for something else, we have to vote that. And for special events, we have to vote anyway. So when we were having annual community fund days, we had to vote the expenses for that because that wasn't included in the list of line items that are in the budget. But we can do it. We can do it, but we have to vote at a public meeting.
Thank you.
And you did not move this.
No, well, I mean, is there any members of the public that want to opine on this budget? Have any comments, questions?
Right. Well, the only thing I was saying, like usually from Robert's rules, they say you got to move it and second it, and then it opens up.
Oh, my apologies. Well, in that case, are there any other commissioners that have any comments?
So you make the motion.
Yes, so I make a motion that ANC 4D adopt the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget.
Okay, and I second that. Now, if there are any quick questions that we can answer, if there's any explanation needed, the commissioner can provide, please let us know. And if you're on the phone, if you can unmute yourself by *6. Hearing none, it's seems to be very clear to everybody. We're going to vote. It's been moved and seconded that we accept the ANC 4D FY22 budget, and all in favor of the budget as presented by our treasurer, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, I think you have one or two more things on and we can.
Yes, so I want to turn it over to one of our ANC 4D constituents from Petworth Peanuts, Megan McCune. This organization, they do great work and activities in our community. They are putting together a Halloween parade event at Sherman Circle from 4 to 6 p.m. on Sunday, October 31st. And the organization is requesting funds from ANC 4D to put this event together. And so legally, we have to hear a brief presentation from a representative from the organization, which is Mrs. McCune. And she did send us the grant application, and I believe she has a brief presentation. So if Vice Chair Noble would let her share her screen, or I guess, I don't know if you want to let her share her screen or you present her PowerPoint.
Yeah, I've got to go through it.
Okay.
And if somebody could please enable my video, that would be great.
You should have.
Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Zach. Jonathan or Commissioner Noble, do you have the actual PowerPoint, or may I share it? It can be rather quick.
Yeah, I've got to share it. You can't share your screen without being the host.
Got it. Thank you. Just to kind of get started, because I know it's late. My name is Megan McCune. I'm the co-chair of an organization called Petworth Peanuts, as introduced by Zach. We are a 100% volunteer-based parents group based here in Petworth. We're focused on supporting and educating and connecting parents of young children in the greater Petworth area. We're a free organization, and we're partnering ideally with ANC, but also with DC Kids Makerspace and a variety of area businesses to host this completely free, accessible Halloween event to be hosted in Sherman Circle from 4 to 6 p.m. on October 31st. The event is an iteration of a similar event that occurred last year, which was in the form of a parade. We're adjusting it to be more of a come and go. Here we go, perfect. Thank you, Jonathan. You can start here. So we're calling it the Spooktacular. It's completely free. It's open to anyone in the greater Petworth area who'd like to come. Last year we had a similar event that attracted around 500 people. So we're expecting between 200 and 500 people, depending on everyone's plans. Over the 2-hour period, you can come by, they can pick up free treat bags, they can do some Halloween activities. There's going to be a little photo booth. DC Kids Makerspace is doing a STEAM activity and a science, tech, art, some sort of activity like that. We're gonna have a sidewalk chalk station, some games, and there's gonna be a costume contest with little prizes on site, so little ribbons on a rolling basis as people come in. And then later we'll have multiple grand prizes that have been donated by area businesses. Since I submitted this proposal, we've secured donations from Tabla, Ace Hardware, Timber Pizza, and Little Coco's, and we're also in discussions with Safeway. We can move on to the next slide. You can see here some photos from last year's event, rather similar. Everybody seemed to have a really great time, and the circle is large enough to make it safe. I've already introduced Petworth Peanuts, but you can see here that, like I said, we're 100% volunteer based with a $0 budget per year. So any help that we can get from ANC to hold this event will be truly appreciated. Move on. And this has changed a little bit. Like I just mentioned, we've secured some additional sponsors, including President Lincoln's Cottage, who will be doing some kind of educational activity in the circle, Timber, Safeway, Tabla, Ace Hardware, and Little Coco's as well. Here is the estimated budget. It's rather self-explanatory. The biggest costs are really the candy. We'd like to hand out free treat bags for any kids or attendees interested. The NPS permit, which is $120 in itself, as well as insurance, a cost which is estimated at $500, but will probably come in less than that. Those are the 3 largest costs. Everything else is rather minor. But we have a COVID plan that includes providing hand sanitizer and masks. We're doing the treat bags so that they're individually wrapped just to make sure everything is safe. Some small ribbons for the costume contest and some signage. In return, of course, we will be sure that ANC's logos are prominently displayed in all of our materials, to include this draft poster, which I've already shared with you all before. You can see the logo, and we can adjust it. It's just kind of a sample of what it would look like. These are going to be 11 by 17, and they'll be laminated and posted throughout the neighborhood, while a very large 3x4 poster board that will be at the event to include all of our sponsors. And we'll be working with you all, with Janice Lewis George's office, to distribute these posters and this information widely to thousands of residents in the area. And that's it. Any questions?
And what is the amount of the grant that you're asking for from ANC 4D?
Sure. If we can return back to the investment slide. So I'm estimating that this, I think it's just a little bit further down. It's one of the green slides. It's around $1,184. But like I said, the majority of that is really the candy, which is a cost of estimated around $300. The insurance, which I think is rather high. We're not yet sure how much it's going to cost, but we believe NPS is going to require it at $500, and then the actual NPS permit to use the park, which is $120. Those are the largest costs. The overarching costs for the event, I think, are going to exceed around $1,500. So we're getting some of that from those co-sponsors, from myself, from Petworth Peanuts. We're all kind of pitching in what we can.
Yeah, I would just add on the insurance that that's something that I advise that should be included in the request. Just that's something that's part of the permitting process. They can procure that from whoever they like, but having some experience, I think that's probably a good high.
Yeah.
And then the actual cost will be, it's the actual cost will be reimbursed, not.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then just clarifying question, is the insurance for in the event that like a park bench gets damaged or something like that?
Yeah, I think also liability for attendees if something happens that we or NPS can't be held responsible.
Right.
So I need to look into it a bit more, but that's my understanding.
With regard to food, I mean, there was an exception during the public emergency. Is it possible that our ANC could supply some of the other things, but not the candy?
Well, Chair Bowser, if I could just interject here. So from my understanding, so the public health emergency, the initial declaration that had been extended like numerous times by the mayor did lapse on July 25th, 2021. But a few weeks later, or a few months later, the emergency declaration was not brought back, but the DC Council amended the law to continue the ability for ANCs to use grants in those special ways that we've been doing during the public health emergency. And so there was a lapse of a couple of weeks from like July 25th through early mid-August where ANCs were not permitted to do those things that we had been able to do. But I believe that extension with some flexibility for ANC grants was extended through mid-January of 2022.
Right, but this is candy. This is not food to, it's kind of a different.
Oh, that's true. That's true. I just wanted to mention that. Yeah.
Different category. I mean, I guess my question to the presenter, is there someone else that can supply the food, and which is the candy, and we could vote on the other?
Sure. So I guess my question to you is, we're in discussions with Safeway. They're interested, but have been a little hard to pin down as far as the nature of their involvement. I think it's possible that we can get them to provide the candy. I budgeted for it anyway, just in case. I just don't have an answer from them yet. So I guess my question is, if we are unable to secure that candy from Safeway, it probably just won't happen without funding from ANC.
Yeah, and if I could also just, Chair Bowser, I'm just looking at the current ANC handbook for 2021-22 regarding some examples of permissible expenses. And one of the explicit examples for allowable expenditures is light refreshments, and they use cookies as an example, which is a sweet treat. And so if they do allow cookies to be used specifically in the handbook, I think it would be reasonable to assume that candy would also be an allowable expenditure. So in the event that it's not, I mean, just looking at that one line item, it's $300. If the Office of ANC says, we weren't allowed to spend that, then we'll lose $300 in our next quarterly allotment. But as we saw in my previous presentation, we're going to end FY22 with over $7,000 remaining. And that's just assuming we spend every penny in the budget, which we won't. So, I mean, I'm willing to take a little risk there in order to make sure our neighborhood kids have candy at a neighborhood event.
Well, that is refreshments. That's at ANC public meetings. And in fact, we were denied a couple of years ago small refreshments like that because it was an ANC special meeting, even though it was on DC water and important issues. So that's not going to get us there. But you're saying that you just want to, even though we're not going to get reimbursed for that, and they're going to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to take a risk on that. Having organized, the Live at Larry Allen events on a $0 budget, because of all the restrictions that are imposed on us as ANCs, I'm sort of at the point where I'm willing to potentially lose $300 from a future quarterly allotment so that we can provide candy to children in our neighborhood. But that's just my opinion.
Okay, I'm not going to get reimbursed for that. And it's not really a close call, because the example I gave with respect to just a few refreshments for a public meeting, a properly noticed public meeting on a serious issue, we did not get reimbursed. But if we just want to just vote it anyway, knowing that, okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's the argument I would make, but if the majority of commissioners disagree, then I guess that's what will stand, but it's just my opinion.
Okay,
Megan, yes, just a quick comment and question. Megan, would you be willing to hang signs in the 4D area, so that you mentioned that this was an event for the greater Petworth area. So I'm just ensuring that all of 4D sort of knows about it. And I think that that's a way to sort of mitigate the maybe not allowable expense. We get more people to really participate in the event.
Jonathan, could you kindly scroll down a little bit to the banner page? So I've already designed the posters myself. You can see a sample of it here. Actually, the bottom is going to be extended because we have a lot more area businesses that have become involved. We can talk to you guys about the logo you'd like me to use, but it will be very prominent on the poster. And yes, I'm already ready to get these printed. It's in the budget, so we'll definitely make sure they get posted.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about a logo. I'm just making sure that it's posted, the sign is posted in the broader 4D area.
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
I would just propose that if ANC 4D is funding a majority of the event with funds that may not be reimbursed, that we get a larger logo.
Absolutely, no problem. I'll make sure to run the draft poster by all of you before it's finalized.
Because as Safeway is prominent, but you're saying that, I mean, it would seem to me that Safeway would be the one.
So yeah, so Renee, this is just kind of a draft I threw together that I also shared with Safeway so they could see what it would look like. Not by any means final, I promise. Very easy to change. And so I'm happy to adjust it. And I also, I kind of just threw the logo together. So I'll work with Jonathan or whomever to make sure that we're using the right materials, that things are represented the way you'd like to see them, and before anything gets printed or posted.
Okay. I mean, again, that's not, I mean, even if you just had just a blip, that's not my issue. I just know that it's gonna be, the candy's gonna be disapproved. And so if we vote for it, we know that that's gonna be the consequence. So
sure.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
I mean, I think the nice thing about this event and kind of one of the goals behind it is that many people are uncomfortable with trick-or-treating still this year. And in general, walking around the neighborhood with little kids, sometimes there's concerns about safety. And so this event is a very safe, family-friendly, free way for kids to come, enjoy seeing other costumes and enjoy getting some free candy. And so I think that really is one of the main draws of this event. So I definitely appreciate your consideration.
Any other questions or comments from the public?
I'd like to make a comment. Do we have to have candy? Can it be something else? Can it be little coloring books or crayon or anything else? Because I know I'm not a real candy component, but I'm just saying, could there be something else for the money besides candy?
So I think from a cost effectiveness perspective, candy is actually one of the most affordable things we can do, but we definitely acknowledge your concern there. And that's why we're working with DC Kids Makerspace and President Lincoln's Cottage to provide some additional kind of goodies for the bags. And the bags also will include little tattoos for the kids, Halloween tattoos.
Oh, those are great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Great question.
Any other comments before we move to?
All right, thank you, Chair Bowser. Can I just request that, I mean, since it is 4D and if 4D is giving money, that we do special outreach to the Kennedy on 5th and Kennedy, since there's probably need there. And maybe even we organize some sort of walk down to Sherman Circle together from there.
That sounds great.
Okay, are there any other comments before we move to the commissioner to make the motion, or did you make the motion?
If there are no other comments, I would make a motion hold on, let me just pull this up so I get the right amount. For Advisory Neighborhood Commission 4D to approve a grant expenditure of $1,184.91 to Petworth Peanuts for the Halloween Sherman Circle Spooktacular event for Petworth residents.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. I think we really had our discussion before it was moved and seconded, but any last minute comments or questions? Hearing none, are we ready to vote? All in favor of granting $1,184.91 to Petworth Peanuts, please signify for the Halloween event at Sherman Circle. Please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'm abstaining. Okay, the ayes have it.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
The last thing is approve of the minutes. Did you want to talk about the expenses for the Live at Larry event? You didn't mention that. Commissioner?
Well, I think we took it off the agenda because we thought perhaps that could be under communications.
It can be, yes. A reminder. Okay, number 10, approval of the July 2021 and September 2021 ANC 4D minutes. Commissioner Bouquet?
Yep, so I am putting a link in the chat to the July minutes first. If the commissioners could click on that link, just to review, I had sent these for last meeting, but we moved it from last meeting to this meeting. So please just let me know if there are any changes to the July meeting minutes. And just to remind folks, this is when we had our discussion with DCRA. Great, so hearing no comments, I move to approve the minutes.
Yeah, I second that. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes. Or is there any further discussion from commissioners or the public? Hearing none, do I we need to vote now. All in favor of approving the July minutes for ANC 4D, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ayes have it. Okay, moving on.
Great, and so then I am putting a link in the chat to the, so we didn't have a public meeting in August. Our next public meeting was in September. And so these are the meeting minutes from last month's meeting, where as the speakers, we had DC Health and DPW. These are a little bit lighter in content. I didn't have as much time this time around to flesh them out, but I did capture the major actions. And I know Commissioner Israel, you had noted to me right before the meeting that we should amend these minutes to include your resolution to get approval through DPR for a permit for Live at Larry Allen Park. And you're absolutely right. It was an oversight for me not including that resolution on there. So I'm happy to include that, of course.
Sure. And so Chair Bowser, just for procedurally, if I want to offer a friendly amendment, do I do that now or after the first motion is made?
I think you can do it. Well, yeah, because it's not really to the public until it's been moved and seconded. So you can
Okay. All right, so I make a friendly amendment motion to the September 22nd minutes to include under new business part of the minutes that ANC 4D unanimously voted in favor of the resolution in support of a DPR permit for a Live at Larry Allen Park event on October 17th, 2021. And I believe it passed by a vote of 5-0.
I second that.
And also, may I ask a question about, we had on there standing rules, which we didn't approve then. Will that be any confusion for anyone reading the minutes thinking that the standing rules were approved back then when they weren't? You get my question?
Oh, sorry, so I put in there the commission action being that we moved to, I guess I can clarify it. So in brevity, I put move to ANC 4D's October public meeting, but I can flesh out that piece a little bit more to be more explanatory of what happened.
Yeah, I missed that part. Okay.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
That's fine. Okay. If there are no other questions, we'll vote on approval of vote on the approval of September 21st, 2021 ANC 4D minutes.
Well, do we have to vote on the friendly amendment first and then vote on the amended?
Well, if she accepts the friendly amendment, then Okay, I did make a mistake because we need to have the motion is for what she has as the minutes plus your friendly amendment. And then that has to be seconded. And so do we have a second? I'll second that with the friendly amendment. And so it's now been moved and seconded with the friendly amendment and we're ready to vote, correct? Okay, all in favor of the commission adopting the September 2021 ANC 4D minutes, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any commissioners opposed? Any commissioners abstain? Okay, the ayes have it. Okay, any quick announcements from, thank you, Commissioner Bouquet. Any quick announcements from commissioners that are burning that we need to get out to the public?
Yes, it'll take me 15 seconds.
About the Stay DC?
No, it was about, we have DPR is hosting a free outdoor movie night, the movie Soul, this Friday night at 6:30 at Larry Allen Park on Gallatin, Illinois, 9th Street.
Okay. And also the Stay DC benefits, as we talked about, are running out. So if anyone needs any assistance in filling out your application, or you know anyone that needs assistance, please let us know. We're willing to help, and the council members' offices have been doing a good job. Councilmember Ward 4 been doing a good job in helping residents as well. Okay, I think we're going to adjourn. It's now 9:12 p.m. and thank you all for your attention. We have a great number of people still left. That's very encouraging. Thank you for your attention, and we will see you next month, the third Wednesday of the month, which will be
November 17th.
November 17th. Thank you, Commissioner. November 17th, and we'll still be virtual. Even though the people at Washington Latin Public Charter School have said that we can come back, I think we're staying virtual through the end of the year. Am I correct in that, Commissioners?
That's right.
Do I have any opposition to that?
Nope.
Let's adjourn at 9:12 p.m. Thank you all, and hope to see you